Hi, in this video I'll show you how you can create landscapes in Figaf that can help you with your transport of CPI iFlows and other artifacts, as well as API management, and also to some extent PI, but PR is a little different because of a number of different factors. But let's get started. The idea is to give you a better way to manage your SAP integrations, the transport process. And the way we normally do that is, if we just look at the process here, it's about you and the Figaf tool synchronize objects to the Figaf tool. User then adds the object to a ticket. You can then test it, create a transport, configure the iFlows, import it to QA, configure and deploy, and then you do the same thing in production. And once you're done, it's finished and you have a fully documented process. So a landscape is defined in Figaf. It's a way to handle your transport flow, where you say if you move from dev to test to production, it's linear. We do have options to do branching, but it is a little more complex, and probably some of the things you need to reach out to us to figure out how to do. And the challenge is, once you have created, you cannot make modifications. Then it is what it is, and you will need to live with that, or delete it and create a new one. You can always create new landscapes. We have a term called virtual agents or tenants, and the concept here is that we know that a lot of customers are reusing the dev system both for dev and QA, and when they're doing that, they would add a prefix or postfix to the different objects. We want to, and if you do that, it becomes really difficult to maintain, because you don't know if someone have made modifications to the iFlow that is being copied. So we normally recommend that you start your development in just the plain packages, and then you migrate or transport it into packages which QA or test as a part of it. The tool will then automatically add pre and post fixes to the iFlows in this way, and this really simplifies the way that you're setting up these things. And process direct is also enabled in the secondary flow, so you can run all of your process directs in this test systems. The way it works is that you create transports, move from dev to test. With this, then you make a change, transport the version to QA, then you can create a new ticket and move it into production, and we can actually create a ticket just for doing configuration stuff. We've created a concept that's called composite landscape, but let me show you what this all looks like. So here we have the tool. We have created a number of different CPI agents that is being used here in this landscape, and we'll start out with going into a landscapes page here. Right now we have a lot of landscapes in our system, but we want to click here on Manage Composite Landscape, CPI and API Management only. We have an deprecated one for doing PI and CPI ones, but we do not recommend that, and this process makes it a little simpler. We go in and we say create a new system here. We will select one of the agents. We will select the same agent again, and we will create a new one here. Where we will select, let's see here, this Figaf ABS. We will call this something else, dev, and to make sure I put them into the same folder, we'll call it QA12, and we will call this prod 12. So we have all of these artifacts in one line. And normally, obviously, you would not have the pre and post fixes, but just to make sure that we get all of this right, you then select next, and then we can go in and set up the different parts of this process. So right now we have two options here, or two ways. So we can go in and we can make back to landscape configuration. If we do that, all of the changes we have made here will be reset. We can go in and see here whether or not we want to deploy the iFlow after transport. Do we want to do naming validation when we are approving this, and do we want to have approval of this? And we can then decide who can approve certain transports and if they should be able to transport or create approval of configuration before the approval goes in. Because we are reusing the dev system here both for dev and test, we now have an option, or it will come out with some predefined rules that it needs says here for message mappings add QA _12 or -12 for all of these. The same with iFlow packages, script collection, value mapping. So all of this will then automatically be added. Some would use like move from dev to test and then from test to QA. Then you can and if the process here does not work with the way you want, you can switch this around and make manual modifications to this. So just no action required, so it will transport it first to the real one and then you can add these settings afterwards. We don't want to make any changes here. We also have here landscape replacement, so this is where you can then write in if it is called dev HANA, then it is called QA HANA, host names, etc. in here. So you have global values where you can go in and you can trigger what are the different artifacts we have here, and what are the different host names that need to be replaced. We can go in and we can create webhooks. If we've created webhooks, we can go and say if an iFlow is changed, what is the event we want to trigger in this case, and then all of these webhooks will then be activated once we create a transport, etc. So that means you can notify Jira about what is going on for these scenarios. We also have here a tab for QA to production, and here we can see that it is removing the prefixes that we have made for this. So you can go in and make different modifications to this process and set up different approvers here, so it can be some different approvers that needs to approve this second step. So all we need to do is we need to configure the landscape here. We can see the overall idea here, and it will then go in and say, okay, what are, based on the objects that we have, does this match into our global landscape? And one of the challenges that we do have found from time to time is if you have reused, for instance, dev underscore something, and you also have the version without dev, there can be some challenges about how it should handle the transport process. I think this is mostly if you remove the prefixes that you created in the dev tenant. So here you can see all the objects, which one has been transported correctly and which does not have. So we just say save here, and then it will go in and create the landscape that covers this full setup. So now we have created a landscape, and that means if we go here to our landscape setting, we can now see this this new landscape is being called here. That means that if we go to our tracked objects and on our D system, we can then select an iFlow here. We can assign it to a ticket. We can select the landscape we want to use in here, and here we'll select this one. The new one we just created, we'll add Jira number to it, describe what we are up to about this. And right now we can add, if we have test cases on it, so we can attach all the different objects that is needed here. So we'll just say attach all objects. We can in and look up the related test cases that we have here. So this is a part of our transport process. We can run these transports on the system in our landscape. And once it has run, we will see the results as a part of the ticket here. So we can see the result of the test here. Everything's green, so we are satisfied, and we can go to our start transport, where we'll be able to configure these different artifacts. So here we can see we are doing a transport of this object. The base object is called this, the transported object is called QA12 underscore, and here we have these different attributes. If we had put in, for instance, a DLP test into our landscape translation, it would then be updated here. And maybe let me just show you how to look at this. So you will just say duplicate, you will go in, and this is one of the things you probably will be needing as you're going through this process and vetting these landscapes. You will see here, okay, we need to go through and we need to add a new landscape here that's called DLP test, DLP QA test. We press submit, yes, and it will just try to update everything that we have as a part of this. And if we then say reload, we can now see that this has been replaced. We get this mark out here saying that this is one of the items that is being transported. And this makes it really easy to go through these and see what is going on. We can also download a parameters report, which is a list of all the different parameters that is being used here. So if you have a large number of iFlows, using this you can see with some sanity check, are there any of your ERP host names you forgot or something like that you need to replace. So that's really a good way to go through to check it. We can send it to approval, and we can approve the transport, and then we can import it. So obviously you can reject it, but that's not much fun. Then we'll get back to the developer to deal with these things. So if you have approval on as default, you cannot approve your own integration. If you want to do that, you need to add or select this check mark to make sure that you are approving or you can approve these changes. Otherwise you will not be informed and it will not be possible for you to approve it. But obviously that is just for standard development that is going on. So it is doing synchronization. I will just take a little while for it to get everything working. But I hope this was useful. You can see how to create landscape, what the landscape capabilities can do. You can have one item in, you can have 3 items into it, and it all depends on what you are up to. Thank you.